Section 17 of Essays, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Martin Geeson. Essays, Book 1, by Michel de Montaigne, translated by Charles Cotton. Of Fear. Obstupui steteruntque comae et vox faucibus aesit. I was amazed, my hair stood on end, and my voice stuck in my throat. Virgil, Aeneid, Book 2, 774. I am not so good a naturalist, as they call it, as to discern by what secret springs fear has its motion in us. But be this as it may, 'tis a strange passion, and such a one that the physicians say there is no other whatever that sooner dethrones our judgment from its proper seat; which is so true, that I myself have seen very many become frantic through fear; and even in those of the best settled temper, it is most certain that it begets a terrible astonishment and confusion during the fit. I omit the vulgar sort, to whom it one while represents their great grandsires risen out of their graves in their shrouds, another while werewolves, nightmares, and chimeras. But even amongst soldiers, a sort of men over whom of all others it ought to have the least power, how often has it converted flocks of sheep into armed squadrons, reeds and bulrushes into pikes and lances, friends into enemies, and the French White Cross into the Red Cross of Spain. When M. de Bourbon took Rome, note in 1527, an ensign who was upon guard at Borgo San Pietro was seized with such a fright upon the first alarm, that he threw himself out at a breach with his colours upon his shoulder, and ran directly upon the enemy, thinking he had retreated toward the inward defences of the city, and with much ado, seeing M. de Bourbon's people, who thought it had been a sally upon them, draw up to receive him, at last came to himself and saw his error, and then facing about, he retreated full speed through the same breach by which he had gone out, but not till he had first blindly advanced above 300 paces into the open field. It did not, however, fall out so well with Captain Giulio's ensign, at the time when Saint Paul was taken from us by the Comte de Bure and M. de Reux. For he, being so astonished with fear as to throw himself, colours and all, out of a porthole, was immediately cut to pieces by the enemy. And in the same siege it was a very memorable fear that so seized, contracted, and froze up the heart of a gentleman, that he sank down stone dead in the breach, without any manner of wound or hurt at all. The like madness does sometimes push on a whole multitude; for in one of the encounters that Germanicus had with the Germans, two great parties were so amazed with fear that they ran two opposite ways, the one to the same place from which the other had fled. Tacitus, Annales, Book 1, 63. Sometimes it adds wings to the heels, as in the two first; sometimes it nails them to the ground, and fetters them from moving, as we read of the Emperor Theophilus, who in a battle he lost against the Agarines was so astonished and stupefied that he had no power to fly. Adeo pavor etiam auxilia formidat. So much does fear dread even the means of safety. Quintus Curtius, Book 2, 2. Till such time as Manuel, one of the principal commanders of his army, having jogged and shaked him so as to rouse him out of his trance, said to him, "Sir, if you will not follow me, I will kill you, For it is better you should lose your life than by being taken lose your empire. Sonaras liber tertius. But fear does then manifest its utmost power when it throws us upon a valiant despair, having before deprived us of all sense both of duty and honour. In the first pitched battle the Romans lost against Hannibal, under the consul Sempronius, a body of 10,000 foot that had taken fright, seeing no other escape for their cowardice, went and threw themselves headlong upon the great battalion of the enemies, which with marvellous force and fury they charged through, and routed with a very great slaughter of the Carthaginians, thus purchasing an ignominious flight at the same price they might have gained a glorious victory. Livy, Book 21, 56. The thing in the world I am most afraid of is fear, that passion alone, in the trouble of it, exceeding all other accidents. What affliction could be greater or more just than that of Pompey's friends, who in his ship were spectators of that horrible murder? Yet so it was that the fear of the Egyptian vessels they saw coming to board them possessed them with so great alarm, that it is observed they thought of nothing but calling upon the mariners to make haste, and by force of oars to escape away, till being arrived at Tyre, and delivered from fear, they had leisure to turn their thoughts to the loss of their captain, and to give vent to those tears and lamentations that the other more potent passion had till then suspended. Tum pavor sapientiam omnem mihi ex animo expectorat. Then fear drove out all intelligence from my mind. Ennius, apud Cicero Tusculanae Quaestiones, Book 4, 8. Such as have been well drubbed in some skirmish may yet, all wounded and bloody as they are, be brought on again the next day to charge. But such as have once conceived a good sound fear of the enemy will never be made so much as to look him in the face. Such as are in immediate fear of losing their estates, of banishment, or of slavery, live in perpetual anguish, and lose all appetite and repose; whereas such as are actually poor, slaves, or exiles, ofttimes live as merrily as other folk. And the many people who, impatient of the perpetual alarms of fear, have hanged or drowned themselves, or dashed themselves to pieces, give us sufficiently to understand that fear is more importunate and insupportable than death itself. The Greeks acknowledged another kind of fear, differing from any we have spoken of yet, that surprises us without any visible cause, by an impulse from heaven, so that whole nations and whole armies have been struck with it. Such a one was that which brought so wonderful a desolation upon Carthage, where nothing was to be heard but affrighted voices and outcries, where the inhabitants were seen to sally out of their houses as to an alarm, and there to charge, wound, and kill one another, as if they had been enemies come to surprise their city. All things were in disorder and fury, till with prayers and sacrifices they had appeased their gods. Diodorus Siculus, Book 15, 7. And this is that they call panic terrors. Ibidem, Plutarch on Isis and Osiris, chapter 8. End of section 17. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey.